Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's up, everyone? I'm here again, with another video. We've got some huge news that just came through. Deshaun Watson was just traded, and we have some, it was just mind-blowing to me. I looked at the notification and it said Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns. So real quick with the timeline, Deshaun Watson last night told Cleveland that they were actually formally out of the race. Deshaun Watson, it was reported that Deshaun Watson didn't want the cold weather. Obviously, he wanted to be close to home. All of that proves to be false because Deshaun Watson now ends up as a Cleveland Brown. He said that that's the place he wants to go. The deal is Deshaun Watson was being traded for 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, while Cleveland gets Deshaun Watson and a fifth-round pick in return. In addition, Deshaun Watson gets a mega extension. His old contract, I believe, was 4 years, $136 million, while this new contract is now 5 years, $230 million, which is $80 million more than any guaranteed contract in NFL history. The last one was $150 million guaranteed in terms of fully guaranteed money. Deshaun Watson now gets a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract. Credit his agents for sure. They are like Kirk Cousin type of agents, getting fully guaranteed deals 100%. But Deshaun Watson, it's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. It's understandable for sure. And now the Cleveland Browns are suddenly probably the primary team, right up there with the Cincinnati Bengals in that AFC North. And when you look at it, Deshaun Watson now going to Cleveland, what does that mean for the 49ers? Let's start with Jimmy Garoppolo's available teams now. If Deshaun Watson was traded to the Saints would actually not be in the mix. But now that Deshaun Watson is traded to the Cleveland Browns, guess what? The Indianapolis Colts are still without a quarterback, and the Carolina Panthers. Those are the only 2 real suitors right now. And the reason I don't say the Saints is the fallback for the Saints was always going to be Jameis Winston. Everyone keeps telling me Saints, Saints, Saints. The Saints really haven't piqued interest in Jimmy Garoppolo. I know that they poked around at the combine, but at the moment it seems like Jameis Winston is going back to New Orleans, and I think that is a guarantee at this moment. The Saints also owe Jameis Winston $3 million in dead money this past for 2022, and then $1.5 million in dead money for 2023. And for such a cap savvy team and a team that's requiring cap plus an affinity for Jameis Winston. Remember, they went 4-2 with Winston last year as their quarterback, who had a 14 touchdown to 3 interception ratio. I know the completion percentage wasn't great. Jameis Winston wasn't a bad quarterback by any means, and I think the Saints are probably more inclined to go back and re-sign him to a 1-year deal coming off that ACL tear because it's going to be cheaper, and it also saves them that $3 million that they would have had in terms of void money. So I don't think the New Orleans Saints are at all in the mix for Jimmy Garoppolo. Instead, it's the Indianapolis Colts and the Carolina Panthers. However, there's one other caveat. That is Cleveland Browns. Their quarterback now, Baker Mayfield, who formally requested a trade yesterday, and now he's going to get that trade request kind of granted, obviously, because Watson's going to Cleveland. Baker Mayfield is not going to be heading back to the Houston Texans, and so he is now officially on the market as well. Me personally, I believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is the prime candidate, and then Baker Mayfield is kind of like the second candidate. But obviously, all the teams are going to be poking around. Baker Mayfield does provide more athleticism. He is younger, so he probably has a higher upside than Jimmy Garoppolo at a price $9 million less. So that's kind of the upside of Baker Mayfield. Although we have seen the antics, we have seen kind of the lack of leadership in some aspects, and so that might not be as intriguing to a team like the Colts. However, the problem with this is for the 49ers is the Indianapolis Colts seem to be the prime destination for quarterbacks, with guys like Jameis Winston having serious talks with them, guys like Marcus Mariota having serious talks, and then also now we have Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo. The Colts kind of are in the best position right now because they can squeeze the most leverage out of 4 teams. Or they can squeeze the most leverage out of the 49ers because they can say, guys, we have these 3 other options. And so if you don't provide a deal that is beneficial to us, it's not as much of a significant upgrade while doing the same for the. So the reason that I say that Baker Mayfield might be a hindrance to the 49ers in this situation, it's not because I think the Colts are after Baker Mayfield. I personally don't think that they should go after Mayfield. I think Mayfield would be a worse option than Garoppolo, especially because the Colts want a leader, and all the reports about Baker not being an adult or whatever that meant coming out this past week certainly doesn't speak to that. But it does provide the Colts with leverage, which is the main thing in this thing, or main thing in this entire deal, because now Jimmy Garoppolo's value likely diminishes a bit because if he's going to be headed to the Colts, they have other options, which means that they can lower the price for the 49ers, which, if that's the case, they could have taken that deal earlier. And I don't know if the second round pick was like a true deal. It likely came from a team that probably is out of the Garoppolo sweepstakes now in the Washington Commanders, who Garoppolo might have vetoed a trade to or whatever it may be. So we can't really speculate to that. But the 49ers have held on to Garoppolo for this long, and now they're kind of in the worst case scenario in terms of gaining value back for Garoppolo. Do I think that they're in the worst case scenario in terms of competing next year? No, they haven't been in the worst case scenario this entire time, because this offseason, a lot of NFC teams have gotten worse while the 49ers have remained fairly similar, if not just a little better. And because they've acquired talent to fill up their holes, so I don't think that they're in a bad position to compete next year. I do think that it's them, the Buccaneers, and the Los Angeles Rams as the prime candidates to come out of the NFC, because the Packers got worse, trading Devontae Adams and losing to Darius Smith, their top edge rusher. In addition, teams like the Seahawks got worse. The Arizona Cardinals necessarily haven't gotten better. And now we just saw Deshaun Watson being traded out of the AFC, or sorry, out of the NFC. So we see all this shift of talent towards the AFC. It seems like the 49ers are primed to compete, but in terms of value for Jimmy Garoppolo in return, it does seem like it's being diminished just because the prime candidate for Jimmy Garoppolo right now is the Indianapolis Colts, and they just don't seem, or they. It's not that they're not in a hurry, but they seem to have multiple options where they can leverage the value down for Garoppolo and get him at a cheaper price than they probably would have prior to all this nonsense. So that's what I mean about the Indianapolis Colts. But the other team that potentially could trade for Jimmy Garoppolo is the Carolina Panthers. And the reason that I think the Carolina Panthers are interesting is because Matt Rule likely is on the hot seat. I know one point has been brought up on social media, and that is they're paying Sam Darnold $18 million this season. I understand, but the thing is, they have an owner who's aggressive in David Tepper, and they have a coach who likely gets fired if he can't produce another 5, 6+ win season. And right now, especially with that division not getting stronger, the Panthers have the chance to make a push to be the second best team in that division. I know they don't have a roster fully devoid of talent, but I think right now their issue isn't money. I think that they can I know that having quarterbacks, both Sam Darnold and Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster constitutes for $45 million in terms of contracts for 2022. However, the Panthers could extend Jimmy Garoppolo for a year, have a consistent option, lower the cap hit, and also be in a prime position to compete for the second position in the division should they want to get Jimmy Garoppolo, because he is a significant upgrade over Sam Darnold, and he also provides Matt Rule with a consistent option at quarterback because he knows what he's getting. I think Ben McAdoo is the offensive coordinator there. I don't necessarily think the fit would be necessarily that bad, because Jimmy Garoppolo now has DJ Moore and potentially even Robbie Anderson if he doesn't get cut or traded, two prime wide receiver options, in addition to Chris McCaffrey. So it's a run-heavy offense with solid weapons around him. I think Jimmy Garoppolo would be in a prime position to somewhat succeed, at least in Carolina. And I do think Carolina is inclined to get a better quarterback. They were so aggressive with the Watson deal. They were so aggressive with Russell Wilson. And they've been aggressive in the quarterback market really this entire time. Sorry, not Wilson, but they were so aggressive with the Watson deal until they were told that they didn't want it. And it's interesting because they didn't want to guarantee money in the third and fourth year. Well, guess what? Now they have a candidate in Jimmy Garoppolo who they can go out and get. I do think that they are a potential destination for Garoppolo, albeit probably the dark horse, as I've said all along for the last 2.5 weeks. I do, though, think when we talk about Baker Mayfield that he could potentially be moved to Carolina. Carolina has Sam Darnold for $18 million. They could acquire Baker Mayfield, who is an upgrade to Sam Darnold, another $18 million on the books, but that is a little bit of an upgrade, and that could potentially boost their roster for 2022. And so I do think that Baker Mayfield, the two prime candidates right now for Baker Mayfield to be moved to, especially since the Browns are an AFC team and likely want Mayfield in the NFC, it is going to be the Seattle Seahawks and the Carolina Panthers. With the Indianapolis Colts in the loop, I just don't know if Cleveland would be willing to trade Baker Mayfield within the conference. So the Seattle Seahawks, who have also had internal discussions about getting Baker Mayfield, they could be in the mix, but it's also the Carolina Panthers. But looking at Jimmy Garoppolo's available teams, it does seem like it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. Unfortunately, it does seem like it won't come at the regular price that we expected. It probably comes at a discounted price. I would be a little surprised if it came at the price that we wanted in terms of a second round pick and a third round pick, like the 49ers have kind of been looking for. I think it comes at a lower price, and that's kind of a little bit of an issue, or not necessarily an issue, but it does show that the 49ers might have overplayed their hand earlier on if they could have gotten a better deal earlier. Of course, we don't know exactly if they had a better deal earlier. That's a little bit of speculation, but if they did, it does show that they played their hand, because not only have they dragged us along, I don't necessarily think that they've been hindered in free agency, but it is a toxic situation, which now is resulting in a bit of attention going towards your rookie quarterback in a negative limelight. And that's not something you want for your franchise future. And so, do I think that Jimmy Garoppolo gets moved now? That's 100% absolutely. What's up, 49er minded? Nice to see you in here. Thank you for coming on in. But do I think Jimmy Garoppolo gets moved now? Absolutely. Do I think it's the Colts? Probably. But when you look at it, I think the 49ers have played their free agency kind of cards pretty well. They've now made a couple of signings, underrated signings, but they still do have cap space and will still have cap space once they move Garoppolo, where this is such a loaded free agency class that they can plug and play in the holes that they still have, and have a roster that can compete going into the draft, where they're likely to have a good amount of capital. They have 10 picks, or I think it's 9 picks after they trade their third rounder to Miami. So they have 9 draft picks, including a second round pick and 2 third round picks. So they have capital to move up in the class or up in the draft if they want to. But they also have capital where they can just select guys and try and develop a lot of guys in this class, while also having contributors that can help in 2021, such as a safety or such as an edge rusher. That's kind of my thoughts on the 49ers right now. I do think that they're in a good situation should they move Garoppolo soon. But the one thing I'll say before I move on, there is one caveat in this entire thing apart from Baker Mayfield, and that is the other quarterback that could potentially be moved. The Atlanta Falcons they did tell Matt Ryan, who is an ultimate professional, they did tell Matt Ryan that they were looking for Deshaun Watson, and now they gave Matt Ryan the space. In addition, one move that the Atlanta Falcons made were they moved Matt Ryan's uh, roster bonus to Tuesday, meaning that if Matt Ryan comes out and says, I want to trade, the Atlanta Falcons could move Matt Ryan by Tuesday. And that would be another bad thing for the 49ers, because if Matt Ryan's on the board, Matt Ryan actually costs less than Jimmy Garoppolo in 2022. He only cost $23.75 million to acquiring teams under the cap. I learned this yesterday. It's less than Jimmy Garoppolo's contract. So the Colts would be more inclined to get a guy like Matt Ryan, who also fits seamlessly in a system like Indianapolis's, similar to Jimmy Garoppolo. Don't forget that Kyle Shanahan, he also coached Matt Ryan and he also coached Jimmy Garoppolo. So it would be a similar system for both quarterbacks, and I do think that both fit in Indianapolis. But if Jimmy Garoppolo or if Matt Ryan were to somehow become available, which it seems unlikely at this moment, he currently becomes the prime quarterback candidate on the market, and Jimmy Garoppolo returns to the back burner, which would be absolutely detrimental to the 49ers, because if Matt Ryan goes to the Colts, guess what? The only really realistic possible destination for the 49ers then, in terms of getting something for Jimmy Garoppolo, that's the Carolina Panthers, who I said was the dark horse candidate. And that probably comes at a very, very cheap price, giving Carolina has to now put on $45 million on their books for quarterbacks in 2022. But that's kind of my thoughts on the Jimmy Garoppolo situation. It does decrease the teams now that Deshaun Watson's been moved to Cleveland. The reason that I said this was absolute worst case scenario for the 49ers is because we lose one contender in the Jimmy Garoppolo race. Whereas if he was traded to the New Orleans Saints, who already weren't in the mix for Jimmy Garoppolo, regardless of getting Deshaun Watson or not, it doesn't remove a team. If he was traded to the Saints, then the Cleveland Browns would still be looking for a quarterback, but they're because Baker Mayfield would likely want out. They'd likely look for a quarterback in addition to the Indianapolis Colts and the Carolina Panthers. That would mean 3 teams in the mix for Garoppolo, with Matt Ryan still kind of looming, but likely not being traded, meaning Garoppolo would have more services, and it would benefit the 49ers more because they'd likely get more out of a trade for Garoppolo, given that there are multiple teams now in it. But now, with likely only 2 contenders, with one being a dark horse and one being the favorite, they likely get less value in return for Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And so that's why I said on Twitter, for you, those of you guys that are looking at my tweets, that's why I said on Twitter that this could have been a little bit of a worst case scenario for the 49ers. I do not mean, though, in terms of schedule. Know that the 49ers do not play the Cleveland Browns in 2022. The Cleveland Browns are not on the 49ers schedule, but the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints were all on the schedule for 2022. So right now, the 49ers did actually get a bit of relief on their schedule for 2022, and they're already facing a number of teams that is extremely difficult. They're facing the entire AFC West, to my knowledge, which are now 4 teams that are all playoff caliber teams. They also face their own division with the Los Angeles Rams and also the Arizona Cardinals, who've proven to be a hard team to beat over the last year. In addition, they face the NFC South, which means they face Tampa Bay. And if any of these teams make a quarterback move, they'll also have them on the books. So it's a tough schedule that the 49ers will have to face in Trey Lance's first year as quarterback. But that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your comments in the section below, and make sure you guys subscribe and like the video. I'll be back with some more content soon. I'm going to be breaking down the signing of safety George Odom, the ex-Indianapolis Colts safety, real soon on here. But I'm going to hop off for now. Thank you guys. Stay safe.